Loneliness. It's a feeling that's often stigmatized in our hyper-connected world. But what if I told you that loneliness in your 20s can be one of the most transformative experiences of your life? Now, in a world that seems to celebrate constant connection, it can seem counterintuitive to seek out solitude. But what if I told you that in those times of solitude is when we truly discover ourselves? Now, loneliness in your 20s can seem like a unique experience. Like you're alone somewhere on an island by yourself, and that this is only happening to you. It can truly feel suffocating. And I want to clarify that loneliness doesn't always mean being physically alone, but oftentimes it's really a longing for emotional connection and a sense of belonging. It's that feeling when you go on social media and you see other people living their lives and you're sitting at home alone, wondering to yourself why it is you're having so much trouble connecting with others or maintaining relationships. Honestly and truly, it's extremely important to realize that loneliness is a very common experience.
I wish I was dead already. I don't want to have to keep doing this, but I am.
The music.
Off the 40 to my bitches look kissable. We taking pictures in digital. Ass fat and her waist is invisible. He fell in love with a real one.
For those of us that are in our 20s, we are transitioning from adolescence into adulthood. And with that comes a unique set of challenges that we honestly were not equipped to face, especially these days. Friendships, relationships, work, school, everything is changing for us so quickly, and that can be overwhelming. It's completely natural and normal to feel a sense of loneliness right now, especially when we're questioning our identity, our purpose in life, what it is that we really want to do, our relationships, friendships. Being alone doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong with you. I myself have been seeing a ton of videos on social media, specifically TikTok, of young people in their 20s that are feeling lonelier than ever. I can wholeheartedly relate to this. I myself have oftentimes felt very lonely and like I was missing out on life. I look around on social media or even the people around me and I see them going out to clubs, hosting things with their friends, having people to go and talk to when they're going through things. And I myself have found it difficult to connect with people and then maintain those connections. Now, the reason for that could be a lot of things. I think one factor is that I moved around a lot as a child. I went to so many different schools when I was growing up, and I would make friends at the new schools, but then I eventually would leave. And it kind of sort of became a pattern. And I think subconsciously, I just decided to stop connecting with people because I knew that they wouldn't be in my life for very long. On top of that, I am just naturally an anxious person in new environments, and it's hard for me to really show my personality to people. And they can oftentimes think that, at least I convince myself in my head, that they will think that I'm boring and uninteresting and not want to be my friend. What can I say? Social anxiety. And then there's also the introversion aspect of it, where I am an extreme introvert. And it seems like as time is going on, it's kind of getting harder for me to put myself out there. I feel like there could be other reasons for me feeling so lonely and lacking friendship at this age, but those are a few. And I feel like these factors are like ingredients that are going into a big pot of loneliness gumbo. Like, what's the recipe to loneliness? A little bit of moving around, a little bit of anxiety, mental health things, a little bit of introversion, a little bit of trauma. I don't know. But what I do know is that I myself have been dealing with feelings of loneliness at a time where it feels like we should be the opposite. I know for myself personally, when I was growing up, I thought that the 20s were supposed to be one big party. Obviously, in your early 20s, you're supposed to be in college, working towards your degree, going to parties, making all these friends, doing all these fun things. And then after you graduate, you get a job and you finally have money, and now you can still go out and hang out with your friends, but now you can do more things that cost a bit more, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what I thought. But I definitely didn't picture my 20s being like this. And I think on social media and in media in general, you rarely see portrayals of 20 somethings that are going through this like, it's like 20 something angst almost. You know how there's like teen angst? It's like we're still going through that. COVID could be a factor in that because for a lot of people, a big chunk of their late teens was taken because of COVID. Just a theory. But either way, there really isn't a lot of representation for loneliness in general. And for the representation that is out there, it's mostly women being lonely because they don't have romantic partnership. But specifically, I'm more so talking about genuine friendships. I know anytime I see a video on social media of people going on girls' trips or having these large birthday gatherings with a bunch of people, a part of me feels kind of sad because I know I don't have that. Or if I think about maybe having a wedding one day, I just picture my side of the wedding being very hollow, lots of empty chairs, or not having a bunch of bridesmaids standing next to me, things like that. And honestly, it really does make me sad. But I feel like when it comes to a lot of videos about loneliness or maybe not necessarily having friends or friendships, people oftentimes go down the route of telling you how to make friends and how to change this, which I think is very important. But I also want to highlight another side of this coin where we learn to embrace the loneliness. Because I think that oftentimes this loneliness can be more positive than we realize. Now, for me personally, I view this era of loneliness as just that, an era. I don't think it'll last forever. At least I hope not. But during this era, I think we can make the most of our time. And one way I really think that we can utilize this loneliness is by embracing the solitude and using it as a means to self reflect. Now, solitude is not the same as loneliness. And I think, first off, instead of looking at this time that we have to ourselves as loneliness, we can kind of shift our mindset into thinking about it as a deliberate phase of solitude. We are taking a personal choice to spend some time alone so that we can self reflect and learn more about ourselves. I don't know about y'all, but for me, I know that I like to cram my mind with things so that I am never alone with my own thoughts. Like the mere idea of being alone with my own thoughts is actually terrifying. And so for a lot of us, we use external distractions so that we really never have to look internally and see what's going on up here. It seems like for me, the moment I remove distractions, all of these thoughts start flooding into my brain and it can be really overwhelming. But one thing I will say about solitude is that it has allowed me to realize that I have certain issues that I didn't even realize I had before. And because I'm realizing these issues are there and I really am not doing much of anything else, I have the time to pour into it and try to figure out a plan to work on them. And this time doesn't always have to be about focusing on negative things, it can also be about focusing on positive things. We can be using this time to discover new hobbies or interests, to finally start working on that project or business or whatever it is that we've been putting off for years, like a YouTube channel, for example. Anything that your heart desires, because we are in a era of solitude. Loneliness is so important because it also teaches you how to enjoy your own company. It can allow you the ability to learn to build a relationship with yourself, which is something that I really had never thought about before. We spend so much time developing relationships with other people that we don't do the same with ourselves. For example, a lot of us are afraid to do things alone, like go to the movies, go to concerts, go out to eat. And I'm still working on it, but over time, I've learned to do a lot of these things alone. I've been to concerts alone, I've gone to the movies alone, and I'm not gonna lie, that really does kind of sound depressing, but it doesn't have to be. We can't really control other people, and there might be times in our life where we have things that we want to do, but no one to do them with. So, do we just not go out and do those things? Or do we learn to embrace our solitude and just go out and do it ourselves? And once we learn how to be more comfortable with doing things by ourselves, whenever people do come around that we can form connections with, we don't necessarily need to rely on them to do things or to feel happiness within ourselves. We've spent the time to learn to love ourselves and build a relationship with ourselves, so I don't really need you. Whenever we meet people and are getting to know people, we can focus on finding and building more authentic connections as opposed to rushing things with people because we're tired of being alone and doing things alone. And remember how I mentioned earlier, a lot of times on social media, we'll see these large friend groups that might do girls' trips or large birthday dinners and all these fun things that we may feel like we're missing out on. Well, On the other side of that, there's also a plethora of people on social media that are sharing their stories about how these groups and friendships aren't really what they seem. Friendships are falling out left and right because of split bills or lack thereof. Girls' trips from hell are happening every other weekend. And just because you have someone standing by your side at your wedding doesn't necessarily mean that they're a genuine friend to you. There's plenty of story times online about bridesmaids that betrayed the bride. And it really makes me think, like, is it really worth it? I think it's so much more important and meaningful to have a couple of friends or a handful of friends that are genuine, that you can have real relationships with, as opposed to having a friend group of 20, 30 people. As human beings, we're only able to connect with so many people at one time. And I also do want to clarify that as humans, I completely understand that we crave human connection. I'm not saying to isolate yourself completely and stray away from that, unless you feel like you're in a time period where you really need that. But don't go so deep into that hole that you find yourself having negative thoughts or negatively impacting your mental health, because that's not the goal here. Ultimately, I just want us to understand that being alone sometimes is okay and we're gonna make it through. And our lives don't have to be put on hold because we don't have anyone to go see Beyonce with or to do anything with, really. Find those hobbies, work on that passion that you've been putting off, and become a better version of you during this era. And although social media can be really scary, it can also be a tool to make connections and to build community. A part of the reason why I made my YouTube channel during my era of solitude is because I feel like I have something to say, for one, but two, I also wanted to connect with people and build community. And I'm still trying to figure out how to do that. But I feel like so far, this has been a really beautiful experience. And I hope that other people can find their version of a YouTube channel, whatever that means for you. So I hope that if you're the person that's watching this and feels alone, you can learn to turn that loneliness into solitude, because there's definitely a big difference. There's a quote that goes, "Loneliness is the poverty of self, but solitude is the richness of self." Always remember that. We got this. But that's going to be the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you could take something from it. I want to thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. If you could like the video, hit the subscribe button and follow me on my socials, that would be awesome. Specifically TikTok and Instagram. I'm kind of struggling over there. I don't know what's going on. I just recently started posting on Instagram. For the longest time, I wasn't posting anything. So if you could go ahead and follow me over there, that would be super awesome. And TikTok also. I post some pretty funny, interesting things, I think. You won't regret it. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.